Good evening, everybody. This is Mayor Cornell Harvey, the City Council. We're getting ready to start our meeting. Hopefully everybody's on board and all is well. So I'd like to call to order the Brunswick City Commission meeting dated Wednesday, December 16th. This is a virtual teleconference via Zoom and it's streamed live. We'll have our invocation by Commissioner Williams, and I will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Williams.
All right, let us pray. Eternal God, our Father, we come now and we pause to say thank you for this, another beautiful day in the city of Brunswick. We come now, God, to do the business of this great city, and we ask that you give us wisdom, you give us guidance, and you give us direction. Father, we ask now that you would just continue to bless us, and as we continue to serve, even during this pandemic, God, we ask that you continue to bless our city, that you always have. Guide us on tonight. Keep us in your care. For it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Now we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag,
To the flag
of the United States
of the United States of America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Again, as we move forward, are there any additions or deletions to our agenda for tonight?
Yes, Mayor Harvey, I'd like to make an addition to the agenda that we would add as item number 5A under items to consider for approval. Consider approval to close city offices on, and I believe it's December 24th, 2020 at noon.
Second.
Okay, it's been probably motion and second for us to add item 5A to our agenda, and that is to discuss closing the city offices on the 24th of December. And I imagine Ms. McDuffie will be presenting that. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I think that was to close for the entire day, not at 12 noon, but to close for the entire day of the 24th.
Yes,
Okay.
you are correct.
I think it's the entire day.
Okay, that's what I wasn't sure. The date was wrong. Okay,
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Well, we will take that under advisement. So anyhow, for the closure of city offices on the 24th of December, 2020. Any further discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed have the same right. Hearing nothing from the opposing side, that motion carries. Thank you so very much. We will add that as 5A. Please don't let me forget that as we go down the line. Okay. All right. As we move forward, our first item on our agenda is updates. It's an update on the L Street project. Mr. Garo Aberson, our city engineer and public works director, will be presenting. Mr. Aberson.
Yes, sir. Good evening. We are getting very close to the end on the L Street project. They got the curb in place throughout phase 3. They've got one driveway slab to install at the Pinova driveway, and we'll be ready for asphalt on phase 3. So we're doing everything we can to get that thing paved and opened up. Obviously today's rain and this upcoming cold weather are not doing us any favors. But working hard as we can to get that thing finished up, paved, and then we'll schedule an opening, grand opening ceremony, as was mentioned before, and get that open to traffic. So that's where we are. Should hopefully begin paving this week, but if the cold weather holds us off, it may be Monday before we're able to start paving.
So how long do you anticipate before we finish?
It's going to be weather dependent. This cold weather, you can't pave after below a certain temperature. It's got to be 40 degrees and rising. So the cold weather does prohibit paving. So it's sort of weather dependent. But we hope to begin late this week, early next week, but it may end up being after Christmas before we're finished.
Well, it's supposed to be some good weather coming up the weekend.
That's true.
I hope so. I hope so.
But they can work on the weekend to get it done if they want to.
Yes, sir. We're gonna push for it.
Okay. So I'll let you know, Garo, we have all taken arrows concerning this the L Street project. I'm no more than you have, I'm sure. But we will get to the end, and so we appreciate that we are near the end now. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Can you hear
So,
me?
Yes, we can hear you, Commissioner Cason. Thank
I'm
you.
just wondering if we can get a projected opening date. We know that you're dependent on weather. No question about that. But have you got a date?
with as far as when we might have a ceremony or
No, I'm saying when you're gonna turn it loose to traffic. What date is that projected to be?
I'm hesitant to put an exact date on it with the weather and going into the holidays here. So it very well may be that first of January before we're able to finish the paving, get the punch list items done, and have traffic on there,
First week of January?
possibly.
First week of January. That's good enough.
We're working as hard as we can to get it done. If we can get it done sooner, we're sure going to try to.
Thank you.
I like how you put it down, Johnny. I really do.
This is production. That's the only way to look at it. It's production.
That's funny. Anything else, Garo, concerning L Street?
That's all I have on that one.
Okay. Any questions, commissioners, comments?
No,
I just want to say, yeah, I
are
just
we
want to
going
say
to have a
thank you
public
to.
comment period? Somebody in the chat had asked
I
if we
saw
were gonna
that.
have. Okay.
Brian will answer that question. I'm
Okay.
sure he's on board.
I didn't see on the agenda, I didn't, and Naomi may be able to shine some light on it. We didn't, I don't think we had anybody sign up, but I mean, you know, I know in the past, the commission has opened up if somebody wanted to make a public comment.
We can, so.
I would say that I see that the topic the speaker would like to speak on is not a public hearing. So if he wanted to make his comments under public comments with the 3-minute time limitation and you know, not a discussion back and forth, I think it'd be appropriate if the commission desired to allow him to speak.
Yeah, okay, all right. Thanks. Well, we still dealing with the L Street project, item number 1. We waiting for comments from the commissioners, so any other comments? I'm trying to hear.
I just
Commissioner-
want to say to Mr. Mayor, I just want to say to Garo and the entire staff that we appreciate the hard work that they've been doing to finish L Street. And I know it's been a chore and it's been a task, and we appreciate the hard work that you guys have put in to get us to this point and hopefully get this thing wrapped up real soon.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask, how are the finances doing? Are we looking good budget wise, Garo?
Yes, sir. We're scheduled to come in right at budget there. We sure are. We're right on with it. Finance.
Good deal.
Okay, there's no further questions concerning that. Garo, again, thank you for that. We realized that this was supposed to be a year's project and it has some setbacks, but we are nearing the end. I want to say, Commissioners, thank you all for us putting it on the splosh and getting it done. This has been a project that's been out there for years and years, and no one really took it up to get it done, and we did. So kudos to us for having the fortitude to push it forward and get it done. And thanks to our staff, you know, they have really gotten it done. So good deal, everybody. Okay, item number 2, presentation. Also, Garo Aberson, City Engineer, Public Works Director, to give a presentation regarding the stormwater master plan.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
Did we have somebody that want to do public comment before?
I'm gonna
before
do
we-
it right after.
Right
Gary
after we
gives-
get through with Garrow's? Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Okay. As you know, about a year ago, we signed a contract with Georgia Water and Environmental Services to develop a stormwater master plan for the city. Up until this point, we've all known that there are certain flooding areas around town. But we haven't had a formal document to identify areas, prioritize those areas, so that we could use those in planning and for grant purposes and future work. So we signed a contract. We hired Georgia Water and Environmental to complete this master plan, which they did. They actually finished it early in the year, probably in March, about the time the virus hit and we kind of shut down. So we've kind of been holding on the presentation of this thing, hoping we get back to a live meeting session, but we didn't. So here we are. We wanted to go ahead and get that presented to you. So we've got Barrett Neal and Burke Murph here tonight from Georgia Water and Environmental Services. They're the two gentlemen that prepared this report. I'm gonna let them talk to you about the report, what all went into preparation of the report, and then, where we can go from here with this information. So I'll turn it over to Barrett and Burke.
Good evening. Can everyone hear us?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, City staff, it's an honor to provide this presentation to you all tonight. And before I forget to mention it, I hope you all have a blessed Christmas and a happy New Year. We've been waiting for quite a while to be able to present this information to you. And we've got some slides here that we want to go through. Can everybody see our screen that we're sharing?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to go through and open this up to questions. So if you have any questions about anything specific, we definitely want to address those as your questions come up. So please don't hesitate to stop me through the course. It's a lot of information. We've worked with Mr. Alberson to summarize it as best that we can and try to be as comprehensive as we can. So bear with us as we go through. And again, if you have any questions, let us know. As Mr. Alberson said, the city wished to have a game plan, if you will, a stormwater master plan moving forward with the stormwater utility that was implemented just a year or so ago. The purpose of the project was to identify and evaluate stormwater drainage issues within the city and to develop an initial plan detailing recommended improvement projects. And the reason that we called it an initial stormwater master plan is this will be updated over time. Just as typical with any sort of planning document, as infrastructure based on age and capacity, as well as future development throughout the city, will increase the need for stormwater improvement. So this is your initial start with your stormwater utility to tackle the projects at hand that have been identified. So with that being said, we had two tasks, basically to take a look at the existing conditions of your stormwater system throughout the city. And that included delineation of your drainage basins, conducting field assessments of existing drainage features and components, and then to prepare the hydraulic information necessary to determine where the issues are and what their causes may be. Once we've completed our analysis, then we were to develop the master plan. And so that basically was taking your existing conditions, the problem areas that have been identified, coming up with a prioritization of how these projects would be tackled, developing opinions of probable construction and engineering costs, and putting that into a format that the city can follow moving forward. We also took a look at potential projects that city staff with your own resources may be able to tackle moving forward that doesn't have to go through the traditional design, bid, build process, that these can be handled internally, which was an important aspect of our work. So as a summary of the existing stormwater system inventory, we conducted an in-depth review with city staff and gathered as much information as available to us, including information that's already a part of your GIS database, and gathering development and previous improvement projects that are on record, and that may go back 20 or 30 years. Pulling that information together and then getting updated information from other consultants who are currently working on city projects. So that was an important aspect of working with Mr. Alverson to just gather as much of the information that's readily available to give us a foothold of where we need to proceed moving forward. And what that analysis did of existing conditions was basically that starting point. And what we've identified is the city has 31 known stormwater outfalls. So an outfall would be where your system would empty into the intercoastal waterways, marshlands on the perimeter of the city. Also, the city has roughly what we know that has been identified so far, over 3,600 stormwater structures throughout the city, as well as over almost 3,200 pipe segments that connect each structure, and ditches to structures, and so on and so forth. And that's just what we know of. We do know that the city is currently working with a consultant on its MS4 program reporting. And each year that they complete a specific area as part of the MS4 reporting, they are updating the GIS information as much as possible. And so that information is good to have. So the system in general may not be complete, but the city is working toward that goal. So that's good to know. That's a good goal to have. As far as stormwater ponds, whether they be detention ponds, meaning that they hold water back and dry up through evaporation or seepage or release, or they are retention ponds, meaning they hold a normal pool elevation. There's roughly 20 of those that are connected to the city's storm drainage system in one fashion or another. Also throughout the city has 26 drainage basins. So that gives you an idea that water is not just going to one particular area where a problem may occur. It's coming from all different directions, and it's going to both the west and the east, so as well as the south. So there's a lot of different parameters to take into account as we're looking at your inventory and assessing its adequacy and capacities.
Can you specifically describe to me what is considered the stormwater structures? Does that include the retention ponds and those other things? Or is it limited to just the culverts and drainage ditches?
Yes, ma'am. So typically a structure would be defined as a an inlet that conveys water. So a curb inlet, if you have driving down the road and you see it, your catch basin curb inlets. It could be a junction box where it does not collect water at all, but it is connecting pipes that are conveying water. It could be a head wall of a culvert. So yes, ma'am, there's a variety of different ways that a structure may be defined, but typically it's going to be a structure that is in a yard or in the roadway or in the curb and gutter that is collecting stormwater and conveying it.
Is there a center to where the outflow is directed east or west or south, or how is that determined?
It's determined by the topography of the land. And so, and also the drainage that is currently installed. So typically water is going to start at the high end and flow to the low end. And so as you get more toward the center of the city, you have your high areas, and typically water will start to flow in the direction to the nearest and easiest, lowest point that it can get to. Now, there are a few areas that we have found where there is stormwater structures that are in places that would take flow from one area and convey it to another. It may not be a down gradient flow, but typically it's going to flow from how the topography of the land is laid. And so that goes back to your 26 drainage basins. So within the city, there are basically 26 areas where you can have a high point, and from that you're going either east or west or south. So it's really dependent. It's more on the topography than anything. As you all are very aware of, Brunswick is very flat. And so that can be truly the reason why there's so many drainage basins, is as development occurred and infrastructure was installed, the developer, the engineer, the city, in some cases, maybe installed the storm drainage infrastructure where it made sense, where there were already low areas, drainage ditches, and things like that could collect the flow and take it to other places.
I have a question, and kind of looking through and looking at all the information that we have here, but I noticed that we don't have anything about College Park. Was that left out purposely, or what's the situation with that area?
Yes, sir. So right now, I believe that is one of the main projects that the city is currently tackling. And so instead of addressing projects like College Park, projects like L Street that the city is already underway in improving drainage and infrastructure with accordance to city staff direction, we wanted to look at known areas that have not been addressed yet.
Okay. I was just concerned. I was like, wow, we got all this information. I don't see anything about College Park. So I was just concerned about that.
Yes, sir. Okay. Looking at the existing stormwater issues, part of our analysis in our field reconnaissance. So in October of last year, we got out in the field. Actually, when it was raining, it's the best way to take a look at what is actively going on throughout the city when there is rainfall. Where are problem areas? What may be the occurrence when we see standing water in the road, or if we see inlets that water cannot get into for one way or the other. And so we identified some areas that were known problem areas prior to getting out in the field with city staff. Some of those areas were Albany Street, Parkwood Drive, Wildwood ditch system near Boxwood Street and Myrtle Avenue, Altama Avenue and 2nd Street, the intersection of Macon and Talmadge Avenue, the Talmadge Avenue ditch system, the Urbana neighborhood at Atlantic Avenue, and the Riverside neighborhood. We also, after we got out in the field and kind of evaluated these areas as well as some other areas, seeing how they reacted to rain. We also took a look at some information the city has supplied to us that was done previously over the last 20 years, that improvement projects, reports, things of that nature that were done in the Peace Street Basin, the Magnolia Park Basin. We looked at Lanier Boulevard over at the Glenn Middle School, and also Habersham Park. So some of those areas had already had some improvements done, but they were not taken to the next phase for one reason or another. So we have all this data that we have collected with our field surveys, what we're seeing in the field, as well as the reports and the documents that the city was able to supply us. And so kind of going back to the outfalls, we were talking about our outfalls on the last slide. So of the 31 outfalls, on the west side of the city limits, near the Ports Authority, there's roughly 13 outfalls. And on the Highway 17 side, the east side of the city limits, there's 18 outfalls. So we were able to, and these are all known, there possibly could be more, but these were the ones that have been identified through field reconnaissance, as well as maintenance inventory that the city provided to us, old maps, capital improvement projects. So we were really digging to see, again, what the system is comprised of, where the water is going, so that we can determine, what type of causes that we're having with some of the stormwater issues throughout the city. So after we got through with our analysis and reviewed that with city staff, we were able to identify 15 capital improvement projects where flooding complaints have been recorded by residents, where city staff has maintenance records of having to go and address needs throughout the city. And so what you're seeing here on this location map is where these potential 15 projects would fall. So going by what we identify each by a letter, Capital Improvement Project A is the Albany Street near F and G Street. B is Parkwood Drive on the west end. C is the Wildwood Ditch near Boxwood Street, Myrtle Avenue. E is the intersection of Macon and Talmadge Avenue. F is Talmadge Avenue ditch system. G is the Ports Authority tide control on the 13 outfalls. H is the Highway 17 tide control on outfalls. I is the Peace Street Basin. J is the Magnolia Park outfall to the fairgrounds. K is Lanier Boulevard at Glenn Middle School. L is Habersham Park. M is Urbana neighborhood at Atlanta Avenue. N is the Riverside neighborhood. And O is completion of your GIS inventory. So that's not shown on the map. That's more of a capital improvement need from a staffing standpoint.
Where was the G? I didn't see that.
There was no D or H either, so.
The G is the Port Authority.
Those are the tide control
Right
projects.
over here.
Yes, so the G and H are the tide control projects, and they are 13 on the Ports Authority side and on the 18 on the Highway 17 side. So we wanted to make sure that we can show this map right here. It would be hard to show that at such a scale that we had it. So our apologies, but these maps, if you can see them, show where those are. So we've identified 15 areas of concern, areas of capital improvement that are needed. So one of the things that is important on the city's behalf is how do you prioritize these? This is something that we worked hand in hand with city staff on, as far as coming up with a way to prioritize these projects that makes sense. How do we know which one needs to be first and which one needs to be last? Because the citizens of the city, if they have a problem, they're going to think that their problem is of the most concern. So we want to make sure that any prioritization is justified. That was one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we completed as part of our recommendations, is so that the commissioners and Mr. Mayor have, the justification of why one project goes before another. And so we developed a priority point value system, and we evaluated those in a 1 to 5 scale, giving each the highest priority. So for instance, a current flooding issue. So going through maintenance records as well as known city issues, if there is a localized flooding issue in a particular area, it got 5 points. And I want to make sure that everybody understands there's no interpretation. We didn't interpret as part of that if an area had 6 inches of standing water versus 3 feet. If it was a localized flooding issue, it got all 5 points. The next is undersized pipe and culvert infrastructure. So if there is a issue with stormwater flooding that is the result of undersized pipes, then it got 4 points. Again, no interpretation. The lack of infrastructure. Through our modeling efforts, if our model showed us that a particular area did not have enough inlets to take all of the water in a particular area, that may be leading another cause to flooding issues, that got 3 points. Tide control. If the tide is impacting internal city flooding, because as the tide comes in and out, is pushing water through the city's pipes and ditches into neighborhoods or other areas, then that got a prioritization of 2 points, a value of 2 points. And if there was a maintenance issue, if a structure was full of sediment, debris, trash that may be inhibiting free flow, then we gave that 1 point. And so if any particular area had all 5 of these items, the most priority points that they could get would be 15. And then if they didn't get one in particular, then they would not get any points for that particular item. So as you can see in our recommended improvements chart on the right-hand side, for each of the capital improvements, these were the priority points that were given to each particular area. This is your starting point of justification. Why is this needed? What justifies one project from being over another one? And so as we go through each particular one, then we have a total number of points for that. And to summarize that, we have come up with a recommended improvement prioritization. And we include other things at this point for justification, and I have a few examples of those. As you can see, we have our priority point ranking, how many points that they got. We also took a look at the opinion of probable cost. How much does each one of these projects have as far as monetary needs? And to kind of talk through that a little bit, the opinion of the localized capital improvement impact. Is it a high impact to the community? Would it be a moderate impact to the community? Would it be a low impact to the community? And I think a lot of that is engineering judgment. This was done hand in hand with city staff. And so what we're looking at are 3 columns of justification. Your priority point value, your cost to complete the capital improvement, as well as the impact that it would have on a particular part of the community. And then they were ranked accordingly. And again, we have some interpretation here with engineering judgment. So I wanted to point a couple of these out to you. Mainly the ones at the top of the list, your high priorities. These were known flooding problems that have really been on the city's list for quite some time. These were areas that we had the most complaints that are impeding traffic when flooding occurs in a particular intersection. That Mr. Alberson's staff has constantly going out after rain to make sure that inlets are unclogged, that the water is able to get out of an area. These have the highest impact to the community. And not only from just the point of flooding, but also safety. Those were the reasons for their higher impact. Now, when we look at how are our high impact projects prioritized, well, we can look at their ranking. We also go and look at the opinion of probable cost. Why is one ranked above another? And we go back to, again, this is where we think these priorities are going to have the highest impact to the community. Let's look at Albany Street. It was the #1 ranked project by priority. However, it only got 13 priority points. The reason for that is that it doesn't have any impact with tide control. So therefore, it got 0 points for having that impact. However, when we look at true flooding complaints and issues such as life safety, the area that is impacted by all of the flooding, it did have lower priority points. It was higher than in cost than the intersection of Macon and Talmadge, but the impact to the community was greater. And again, we worked with city staff to determine, at which point these can be implemented. And so that's just a great example of why things are the way that they are. The intersection of Macon and Talmadge, it got all the priority points. It has it may cost up to $600,000 to complete. It has a high impact to the community. This is one that can be completed at the top of the list. It really has a significant impact. When we look at a project like Lanier Boulevard at Glenn Middle School, again, a high impact to the community. It is impacted heavily by tide control. One of the reasons, looking at it from an engineering standpoint and judgment, it is one of the second highest, most costly project to the city to complete. It does have a high impact. The priority point listing, instead of 15, was at 11. But there are other projects that can be completed for a less amount of money that have more of an immediate need and will impact the community greatly. Also, with an impact, it could be how quickly can the project be complete. When we look at the impact, when you have a project like Lanier Boulevard, that particular project, the Lanier Boulevard needs to be raised, because right now when we have a good tide, it floods the entire road. So, we need to raise the road. In doing that, this takes a lot of time and effort in planning. So yes, it is a high priority. There's a definite need and significant impact to the community, but a project of equal need that can be completed faster had a higher priority ranking, again, from an engineering perspective. I want to point out our two of our next ones. As you can see,
Can I ask a question about Lanier Boulevard? Can you hear me?
I'm sorry?
Can I ask a question about Lanier Boulevard?
Yes, sir.
All right, it says at Glenn Middle School. You've got a ditch that runs there at the athletic fields just after, if you keep going instead of turning into Howard Coffin Park. Does any of this work include that ditch?
Yes, sir. It goes all the way up to Gloucester.
Super. And how about the little lake there on the right? That's been a problem of flooding.
Yes, sir. That's where we would implement tide control as part of this project. And so it would be the entire length of the road. That's one of the more costly projects. Our opinion of probable cost is almost 2.3 million to complete those improvements.
Would that include piping part of that ditch?
We will be limited in some aspects because that is considered marshland. So we may not be able to pipe it all, but we would definitely look to improve the area. And if the EPD Coastal Marshes division will allow us to do certain things to improve that, then that's what we would want to do. Yes, sir. But I can't guarantee that any of that would be possible.
I recommend getting on that just as fast as we can and trying to get that done. It really needs it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. The next two that I wanted to point out in terms of priority, you'll notice that capital improvement project D and F, Altama Avenue and 2nd Street and Talmadge Avenue ditches, they only had a priority point value of 8 each, and their impact was considered low. However, we have identified these with Mr. Alverson and city staff as in-house projects that do not have to go through the traditional design bid build process. These could be handled with internal resources as funding is available. They could be completed at any time. And so therefore, this would be something that we feel definitely deserves prioritization, because it's something that can be done without a lot of planning and time and things of that nature that go along with your traditional process. And that was one of the things that city staff really wanted us to advise them on, is what can we do internally? What can we do to save our taxpayers money? We have the equipment in some cases. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And the staff, what do we need to do internally to complete our own projects that will have an impact and take the burden off of our capital improvement project? And so these, even though they have a low impact, these could be substantial. These could be completed quickly and without having the red tape, if you will, of going through a bidding process, not only with consultants, but also with contractors and contracts and things of that nature. So I wanted to point that out. Those were the reasons why those two came up, even though they had low impact, is what can be done by the city internally to improve drainage throughout the community. Then looking down, we get into several moderate impact. One of the ones, Peachtree Basin, is a significant investment. That basin drains through the Pinova industrial site. It will require a tremendous amount of coordination with possible easements, redirection of flow to get around it possibly. So it just had 13 priority points, but for $6.1 million potentially to get it done, there are some other needs that have been prioritized that can be completed for the amount of money that one would take. It's definitely one that's going to stay on the list. It's one that needs to be on the city's radar, but as far as priority, it fell down the list quite a bit. So just pointing those out. Finally, I did want to point out the Urbana neighborhood at Atlanta Avenue. This was one of the projects that we identified that the city didn't have a tremendous amount of concern about just historically, but there was evidence that was gathered during the rain events as we watched the flow of water. We did see some localized flooding, but it was just minor. It's probably something that citizens have become accustomed to, that isn't necessarily something that should take a high priority. At this time, its impact would be somewhat lower for the cost that we have in there. And so that's why it more or less fell down the list to a low priority. It's just because it didn't have a lot of bang for the buck, if you will, like some of these other projects. So going through, again, every area was given a priority point value. Then we looked at how much it would cost to complete those, each project. We looked at the impact to the community as a whole, and then we were able to rank all 15 projects. The total cost of this, currently, we're looking at approximately $18.4 million to complete all of these projects. These won't be completed, in a short amount of time. They will be completed over time. So as we check the box off each project that is completed and taken off of the list, more than likely there will be other projects that will eventually make the list. Again, going back to the reason for an initial stormwater master plan, because there will be updates every 5 to 10 years, especially as the city, the community, the county grows. Those stormwater needs are going to be a continuation to be dealt with. So I know that's a lot of information on the prioritization and the recommendations, the impact. Are there any questions?
I've
Yes.
got one that I would like to ask why it didn't make it there at G Street. Talk about Urbana Park and Martin Luther King. Right at the light there, that has flooded for as long as I can remember. Has it been taken care of, or is it just not worthy of this list right now?
No, sir. More than likely, that's going to be a part of one of these projects where Barrett and I are sitting here discussing what project that may be wrapped up to on G Street, and that may be a part of our Peachtree Basin or Albany Street. Yeah. So as we look right here, we're calling this Albany Street near F and G Streets, where we see the flooding. We've got those pictures there. So it is included as part of the study. We just don't call it G Street.
Well,
Is that the area that you're referring to?
yes, definitely.
So yeah, that was at the top of the list. We went out there when it was raining and that was almost a couple feet underwater. So it is
It's
number
very
one priority on the
similar
list.
Here at G Street to the way it is on Parkwood Drive, there after you come off of Altama, going east. It's, I don't know if it's in the same basin or in the same, runs contiguous or what, but it's funny that it's close to, you know, it almost lines up there.
What about project area B on Parkwood? I didn't know if that was a typo where it's only listed as a $400 cost estimate.
Yes, man, that's probably 400,000.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 400,000 on what I'm looking at. No $400 on this list.
That'd be a nice price for it though.
You know, going back up to the Talmadge Avenue thing, I can remember having the responsibility for the roads building and there where the storage places are. And it flooded completely in that building. It was a time after it was a furniture company. And we had offices in that building. And that whole place was underwater. It was as bad as it is there on Talmadge and Macon, but all the way through.
Right there at that Popeyes.
Pardon me?
Yeah.
So yeah, right there at that Popeyes.
Yeah, everything had to come out of that that big building. Everything that was in there. It was unbelievable. And I think it's flooded since it's been a storage shelter or storage place.
I noticed on your estimate, you had a 25% contingency. Is that on every project estimate?
I'm thinking they may differ depending on the size of the project. Typically, if it's a project that is a smaller budget, then we may have a larger contingency just to cover any unknowns that we may have. But
I think we mainly stuck to about 25% on most of these, just based on construction costs. Just to kind of, since there is no estimate of necessarily when these projects are going to be completed, they may be over the next few years, they may be 10 to 15 years from now. And the cost of materials, time, all those may impact the cost in the future. So that's why we included a pretty significant contingency. Also, once you get in there and start doing survey, et cetera, and stuff like that, you may find some other issues that just from what we're looking at from a GIS standpoint and field reconnaissance, we may not be able to tell from that standpoint.
Thank you.
If you had $20 million to do these projects with, how long would it take to do them?
well, I think at that point, it's going to be a workforce issue. These projects, I know Mr. Alberson has 5 consultants on his engineering list. So if you had 20 projects and gave 4 to each consultant, they may be able to wrap them up from an engineering standpoint in a year or two. At that point, when everything starts hitting the street, I think you'll run into where it'll be tough to find the contractors to take on 20 projects all at one time. But I would say that a goal would be to complete these projects over a 10-year period.
Okay.
I think that that's a very feasible time frame, depending if the funding was available. Because again, in 10 years, with development, with infrastructure that may be good now, but start to degrade in 5 to 10 years, other issues may pop up. And so again, having the master plan updated every 5 to 7 years is good for a number of reasons. First, Barrett tackled it, construction costs, material costs increasing, labor costs increasing, contractor availability being questionable. So to get better budgetary numbers going into your next cycle is extremely important as you start to cancel a few of these projects off the list.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So one of another item that's important to the city, especially its ability to complete projects in-house with its own resources, is where do we stand now with equipment and as well as staffing to be able to tackle some of these projects. So one of the things that we work with Mr. Albertson on is what he has in inventory right now. So we've got a list of that he uses on a daily basis to make sure that the streets are clean and that stormwater can be conveyed properly and that flooding complaints are addressed. So an excavator, a mini X, 2 front end loaders, a track hoe, a dump truck, flatbed dump truck, 2 street sweepers, a vac truck, a camera trailer, and 2 pickup trucks. That's what Mr. Albertson has as is his use to address all the issues throughout the city. So kind of going back to the number of structures in the city, 3,659 structures, that is a lot. It is a tremendous amount to maintain, not including all the pipe that connects each structure and the ditch systems that need to be cleaned that fill up with sediment. So when planning for future needs of the city to continue to provide the services that they do to the citizens, we have identified some needs. Those needs being a combination vac truck and catch basin cleaner, another street sweeper, a medium-sized excavator, a mini X, a front end loader, a CCTV vehicle trailer, another truck, a larger truck that's able to pull equipment around the city, a 20-foot trailer, a dump truck, and then additional supporting equipment that is just necessary that can add up over time, whether that's equipment to maintain the equipment here on site. It could be software upgrades, additional ancillary equipment, safety harnesses, tripods, surveying equipment, things like that. And of course, these are just budgetary needs. These are things that are on a wish list, but they have been identified to make sure that the city can provide the right level of service during major events, such as major rainfall, hurricanes, to make sure that health and safety is taken care of, keeping the streets clean of debris, and being able to clean out basins if they're causing flooding issues and things like that.
Do we have the software to keep up with this right now?
I'm gonna have to defer that to Mr. Albertson. I believe there is something that is used by the city to be able to maintain and track this equipment as far as maintenance records.
And part of the plan we'll eventually get to, we do recommend maintenance on each structure and how often that they need to do that. I know that's also part of the MS4 program that's already in place.
You're asking about software to keep up with equipment or maintenance or?
Keep up with the whole system. Is there software available? Have we got the technology to do what we're doing now? And do we have the technology to do what we're looking at here tonight?
As I mentioned, we have we use a work order system to help track our vehicle maintenance and our vehicle condition, those kind of softwares. We also track our maintenance of our inlets and ditches and those kind of structures through our GIS, and that's done through reporting of the MS4 program. So yes, sir, there's softwares out there. There's not one central software that we use to do everything in here. A lot of this is done on a couple of different platforms, but the technology is out there and we are utilizing it.
Okay, thank you.
I touched on this a little bit earlier when we were looking at the prioritization of projects, in-house improvement projects that Mr. Albertson and his staff can tackle. We talked about the Talmadge Avenue dishes and the Altama Avenue 2nd Street. So these costs, these opinion of probable costs, are if it was traditionally done from a design bid build perspective, with engineering and getting contractors on board and things like that. So in using resources internally, obviously there's a cost to the city, but it would probably be considerably less to be able to do this in-house. And so out of the needs that are out there, these are two projects that can be tackled when the city deems that they're capable of moving forward with these projects. Another aspect of our scope was to help Mr. Albertson develop a maintenance program plan for maintaining all of the infrastructure throughout the city. And so we looked at, how will he maintain the piping and the structures in the streets and on the roadside, ditches, detention ponds, outfalls, habitat enhancements and things of that nature, reduce pollutants into the estuaries and marshes, and then meet the requirements of his MS4 permit. And so as part of that, we looked at a true plan in place that can accomplish these things. So looking at street and drainage structure inspection and maintenance procedures. So 3,659 structures that need to be looked at every 5 years in accordance with the MS4 program. That's a tremendous amount to take on. And so that goes back to having the right equipment, having the right staff that's dedicated to doing that. The city is currently split into 5 MS4 zones. And so every 5 years, each zone must be complete so that it meets the requirements of inspecting all of its structures every 5 years. So working on the procedures for that. We identified, as we currently stated, 20 detention, retention, stormwater ponds throughout the city. How will the city maintain those? How will they, are they on private property? How do we gain access? It's connected to the city's stormwater drainage system. So defining the parameters there to make sure that those ponds are being inspected and maintained. Outfall maintenance and inspection procedures. So we've got 31 known outfalls throughout the city. Those need to be inspected, maintained, make sure that they're not, something isn't pushed up into them from a storm surge or anything that may obstruct free flow. So what are the procedures with those? And then all of this is kind of tied into the MS4 inspection program, making sure that your permit is the requirements of your permit is met every 5 years and staying on schedule and on task. Again, going back to having the right equipment, having the right staff in place, what projects can be completed so that it becomes a part of our MS4 improvement list that'll be a part of your documentation. So all of this information is compiled into a maintenance program for the Public Works Department. And as a part of that, working with Mr. Alberson, we have developed not only parameters and procedures, but also inspection and maintenance checklists. So when field staff are out in the field, everything is already ready for them to fill out. Basically, they can put the location of the complaint, the location of the structure inspected, take a photograph, put the date, the complaint, go through the checklist and circle what is applicable. And then as soon as that's complete, that will be saved into the city system. And so it's a comprehensive way to make sure that you know how many flooding complaints have been addressed throughout a year. And that goes back to future improvement projects. If you're having to clean out a particular intersection because of sedimentation, because of trash buildup, year after year after year, well, that you have a record that documents that, and then that can be converted over. Well, maybe we need to look at an overall plan, a capital improvement project, so that city resources aren't being dedicated to one specific area time and time and time again. So this is to help staff, is to help tracking, is to help Mr. Alberson be able to give you confidence that these issues are being addressed over time. Well, I know that was a tremendous amount of information, and I hope I didn't take up too much of your time this evening. Are there any other questions that we can answer at this time?
I love the presentation. I love the information that has been gathered. It's something that is long overdue. And so now it gives us some clarity on how to view the needs, and especially the information that was provided on the needs of our specific department and how they can better service the needs of the community if they had this equipment in place. And so that tells us a lot as to what they are able to do using the minimal equipment that they have in place now. And so I just think this is very much needed information. So thank you all for putting this together, Garrow, your staff, everybody that was involved in putting this information, this comprehensive information together. And so I think you can better assess the direction that you move in if you have the adequate information that you need to make those right decisions. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make a comment, and I guess this is kind of related to McDuffie and to Garrow. I think at some point we probably need to get together and just have a work session based upon this information so that we can start planning what direction we're going to go in and start planning, which projects we're going to try to get up and moving as soon as possible, not just let this stuff sit on a shelf and collect dust for the next 5-6 years.
I think I would like to see, in conjunction with what you just said, Commissioner Williams, is as to how we can start procuring some of the equipment so that we can better maintain the in-house stuff that we can do as we look at how we can branch out into taking up some of these other projects.
Yeah, I think all that will be a part of that discussion and, start so that we start moving in that direction. So I think that would be a part of the total package.
I love it.
Okay, just let me say here that I agree with you all commissioners about what we need to do, the direction we need to do, sit down and figure it all out. Also, I agree that we've been operating with minimal equipment. That's like sending our personnel off to war without giving them the means to fight the war. And we realize that we've been taking a lot of hits concerning our storm water, storm drainage, flooding, and so forth. We hear it all the time on the radio about they know that we're gonna flood because our ditches are stopped up, and especially the outfall. So it's good to know that we did a comprehensive inspection, comprehensive to figure out exactly what we need to do, find out all our shortcomings, and also especially with our equipment and so forth. So we are on the right track. It's gonna take us. It didn't take us overnight to get here, but it's not gonna take us overnight to completely finish it all either. But we're on the right track. Commissioners, we institute a stormwater utility fee that got us started. So we're on that road, and we're just about ready to tackle this whole problem in its entirety. So I think, Gary, I thank you so much for what you did. I thank you, the staff, city manager, for what your guys are doing. So now we just need to give you guys the authority and give you guys some power, some strength to go ahead and implement this plan, so we can help all our citizens here in the city of Brunswick.
Well, and I'd like to say, note that in the SPLOST list that you have,
Yes.
the original one didn't have any public works equipment in it, but the
Yes.
one that I revised and modified does. So this is one of the reasons we went back and took a look at the SPLOST and said, we really need to make sure we fund some of this equipment that's needed.
I
And the
agree.
storm
I agree.
drainage.
Awesome.
Great.
Awesome. Totally.
Yes.
Totally. And because
Any
this,
other comments or
this,
questions, commissioners?
yeah, no, we're good.
Okay. Thank you, Garo. Thank you for the presentation, sir, that you give us. And we're gonna move right along, and we will schedule a work session, as Commissioner Williams stated, to further push this forward and keep this as a top priority, knowing that we need to do that. So thank you so very much. We will transition now into a public comment period. I know we have one individual online who wants to speak in public comment. I think it's Mr. Josh Dukes. Mr. Dukes, if you want to, someone please unmute his mic so he can speak. He have 3 minutes to say what he'd like to say.
Hi, folks. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead on.
Great. Thank you so much, Mayor Harvey, and thank you to the commission for just allowing me a few moments to speak. I apologize for not signing up earlier. I wanted to speak on behalf of the residents of the area around Wright Square. I know that's one of your agenda items this evening, to approve the changes that we're looking for Wright Square. I have authority from my neighbors here to speak on their behalf in favor of the project. I myself live at 1018 Carpenter Street. We also have 1016 Carpenter that signed on, 1010 Carpenter. And then on the other side of the square, residents over at 1027 Egmont and 1009 Egmont. And this group of neighbors actually comprises basically a good sample of the entire residential half of Wright Square. Just wanted to let you know that we're all in favor of this. We want to see these improvements and changes. We've all been working hard to do our part here in the neighborhood. Several renovation projects going on in the neighborhood to clean up and continue to improve the old homes here. And we just hope that the commission will vote in favor of this project this evening. So thank you. I appreciate you letting me talk on that.
Thank you, Mr. Dukes. Another thing too, I want to ask you, what neighborhood planning assembly are you guys associated with?
It's the Soglo Neighborhood Planning Assembly.
Have they come forward to be in conjunction with you guys bringing this forward, bringing this presentation forward?
I did reach out to them, but I believe over the course of COVID, the Neighborhood Planning Assembly hasn't really been meeting actively in the last couple of months. So I wanted to show up on behalf of just the citizens ourselves as individuals. But I did speak. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So should they be So Glow or should they be historic?
I believe it's the historic
That
Brunswick.
area should be historic.
Correct.
Mr. Mayor, we did have a meeting back when the design of this project started, back before the COVID set in, it was a public meeting, and the Neighborhood Planning Assembly was in attendance there. So the whole group is aware of what's going on. Some of their leaders were involved and had some comments and input going into the design of the project.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dukes, for your comment. Is there anybody else that was in the chat that needed to comment on something? Well, hearing none, we will close that period out. Thank you again, Mr. Dukes, for your comment. We're moving right along for item number 3, items to consider for approval. Consider approval of December 2nd, 2020 regular scheduled meeting minutes. It was in our packets. Hopefully we got an opportunity to peruse it. And
Motion to
with that,
approve.
I'll entertain a motion to.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and second for approval of the regular scheduled meeting minutes. Any further questions, comments? Hearing all in favor, please raise your right hand. Say aye.
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 Opposed have the same sign, same right. Hearing none from the opposing side, that motion carries. Thank you, commissioners. Item number 4, consider approval of alcohol beverage license renewals. Ms. Monday is presenting.
Oh, yes. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, there is 10 businesses that have applied for renewal of their alcohol licenses and permits. The permits vary from beer, wine, and distilled spirits. All the applicants have submitted all their necessary paperwork. Criminal backgrounds have been conducted on owners and managers. Nothing negative has been found on any of the applications that would prevent the applicants from possessing an alcohol license. The list is
Ms. Monday,
before
would you please list those names, please?
list the names. Absolutely. It is Arte Pizza. They're at both locations. Bardello's, Blaze Pizza, Blue Door, Genright Seafood, Olive Garden, Reed's Apothecary, Russell Sports Bar, and Sunoco Food Mart.
Okay. Commissioners, any comments, commissioners? Well, we heard
Since it's a renewal, we don't need a public hearing, correct?
No, we do not. They're just renewal. We heard the presentation by Ms. Monday. What's your will and pleasure, commissioners?
I'll make a motion that we approve all 10 of the
Second.
alcohol license renewals.
I got a motion, need a second.
Second.
It's been seconds.
Okay.
I think Johnny
Motion second
second.
for the approval of
Johnny
all 10 of. We will get through this. It's been approved motion second for approval. Any further comments? Yes, Mr. Commissioner, that's you, Ms. Casons.
No, I'm just approved. I'm ready to go.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye, raise your right hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed have the same right. Hearing none from the opposing side, that motion carries. Thank you, commissioners. Now we're at item number 5, consider approval of contract for construction of traffic improvement around the perimeter of Wright Square. Mr. Garo Alverson, our city engineer and public works director, is presenting again.
Garo, you're muted.
There we go. Now we're unmuted. Okay. As you know, there is interest in making improvements to Wright Square, which would include removing the section of George Street between Egmont and Carpenter Streets and improving or combining the two halves of Wright Square with a type of monument or water feature similar to Hanover Square a couple of blocks to the west. In order to remove that street, or before we were to remove that street and make those park improvements, we would need to reroute traffic around the square or around the perimeter of Wright Square so that traffic could continue to flow in that area. And to do that safely and effectively, there are some improvements that need to be made for the roadways to accommodate the volume of traffic, as well as some of the larger vehicles that may need to get through there, such as trash trucks or fire trucks if needed, and that kind of thing. So there is a sketch which is included on the last sheet of your packet to kind of gives an overall view of the improvement project around the perimeter of the square. Most of the improvements will be located along Carpenter Street, which is along the southeast corner of the square, and along Carpenter Street on the northwest corner of the square as it intersects Egmont Street. On the southeast corner of the square, that section of Carpenter Street, which is the area that Mr. Dukes just spoke about a few minutes ago where he lives, is certainly in bad shape, and it's probably one of the worst conditions of roadway that we have in the city. The asphalt's completely coming apart, deteriorated, crumbling, and a lot of potholes in terrible condition. We also need to make some improvements to widen the radii along those south corners of the square. That's where I mentioned to get the larger vehicles around there. Along with the resurfacing of Carpenter or reconstruction of Carpenter Street, the project will also include resurfacing of Carpenter Street all the way from Prince through to George Street. So that whole area of Carpenter Street, part of it will get rebuilt and regraded, but the whole area will be resurfaced. And then on the northwest corner of the square, if you remember a few years ago, the school board actually built this section of road around the north perimeter of the square. They have since deeded that property back to the city. Right now, there's sort of a jog in the alignment of that roadway. We would widen that roadway to be able to take out that jog and make traffic flow a little better through there. And that widened roadway would allow for some additional parking along the north side of the street there, which would help to service the school there. Then we would also install curb along Egmont Street between Carpenter Street down to George Street in front of the cemetery area, the burial area there. That would help with drainage, but also possibly help prevent vehicles from parking and driving on that portion of the square. So following that, then once we get traffic on the perimeter of the square, then we would be able to come in after the fact with and remove that section of George Street between Egmont and Carpenter, and then proceed with the park improvements. So we designed this project, put it out to bid. We got 3 bids as shown in your packet there. The low bid was from Georgia Asphalt Producers at $147,197. We have reviewed that bid. We are comfortable and confident in moving forward with that. So that we're bringing that to you tonight for approval of that contract. We have discussed this with the Finance Committee. One of their questions was this a necessity or an enhancement? We feel like the condition of Carpenter Street, that segment of Carpenter Street being what it is and the bad shape condition that it's in, the fact that it will be improved throughout the project brings this project as a necessity more than an enhancement. As far as financing, the project will be financed through our LMIG funds that we would get for this year. We have not designated those for anything yet. We did discuss LMIG funds for next year that would go to the Magnolia Park project, but we won't need those for another several months, and the next fiscal year will be available at that point. So we've kind of got a gap year here with our LMIG, so we will be able to apply those funds to cover the cost of this improvement project. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Am I correct to say this thing gonna take 60 days? That's what it says?
Yes, sir. That's what we have in the contract. We feel like this is a project where we should be able to get in, knock it out, and get out of there.
But then the pulling up of George Street, that work that would actually be done by the City Public Works would be some additional time, correct?
Yes, ma'am. That's correct. That is not included in the scope of this project or the 60-day time frame there. Once the work is done and we get traffic moving on the perimeter, then we would come back with our crews in-house and remove the existing pavement and bring in any fill and make the improvements that will be needed inside the square for the park improvements.
Carol, how much would it cost a contractor to remove that road, and how much is it going to cost you to remove it?
I have not gotten a price from them before included in this. We can certainly look at that and compare those costs.
I'd sure take a look at that. I really would. They've got, this is our primary contractor, right?
They have done a lot of work for us, yes, sir. Mhm.
I would think they could get in there a lot more with equipment and expeditiously and knock it out and get it done, which would be worth something. I'd take a look at it.
But we'll certainly compare those numbers, before they finish out.
Another thing I'm looking at here is the signage. You've got $5,700 in there, and you've got them removing and reinstalling and that sort of thing. Wouldn't that be right up our alley?
Some of the remove and reinstall could be done by but a lot of times it's easier if you have a contractor in there to let them do all that as they're bringing in new signage. There'll be a good bit of new signage that comes in with this project. And also, if anything goes missing, then that contractor is responsible for replacing that, whatever.
I can understand that. I would sure look at the demolition of George Street and compare what you're going to do it for versus what they could do it for. And the timing would be a big concern also.
Certainly. We'll check that out before they get out of there and demobilize.
Thank you.
I think it's important to note too that we did meet with some of the residents close by certainly within that same NPA. And we were able to make sure that the engineering of the roadway improvements would not come at the expense of any trees coming down. Is that correct, Garrow? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, that's right. We are not planning to take out any trees with this project.
That's huge.
It is.
Absolutely.
Okay, any more questions, commissioners, concerning the award of this contract? Commissioner Williams, can you give us a little synopsis of what the Finance Committee had to say?
Well, we looked at all of those issues that we just talked about. Of course, the cemetery that's there, We talked about the trees and all those things that are there. And after looking at the project is $133,815.50 with a 10% contingency. So we felt like with that being in place already, if there's any change orders or anything of that nature, it should have enough in there to cover everything that we would need to do. So the finance committee didn't see any reason to continue to hold this project up. We thought that we could move it forward with these, with these conditions. So.
Okay. Any further questions, commissioners, concerning this project? City manager, any comment?
No comment, other than to say that we will have some LMIG or LMIG money left over.
Yes.
Because we do have to have a match. So we are looking at possibly doing some other smaller road improvements with that funding.
Okay. All right, Commissioner, you heard from Finance Committee, you heard from City Engineer, Public Works Director, and also from our City Manager as well, concerning to this project with Wright Square. Realizing that there's a cemetery there. We've been working on this for some time now, and you also heard from a public comment too from Mr. Josh Dukes, one of the citizens that surround Wright Square. We have been having some issues with people parking in the square, and our city engineer has they come up with a plan to route this traffic around that square and reintroduce the square back to all the citizens of Brunswick. So with that being said, if no further other comments, I entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question, please.
Yes, sir.
If you will. Gero, what was the name of the company that you said was?
EMC.
Do you remember the name of the company? Because I'm seeing a different name than what you said earlier.
The name of the contractor?
Yeah, it's got Jay
Yes.
Hire on here.
Yeah.
It's the same company. Jay hired as Georgia Asphalt. They go by Georgia Asphalt for a lot of their paving contracts, but
Okay. That's what I thought you said, Georgia Asphalt. I was trying to make sure we had the right one. I didn't want us to.
Yes, sir. It's the same company.
Okay, all right.
And
I'll make a
just
motion
wanted to make one
approve.
comment
Go
real
ahead.
quick. I'm sorry, Commissioner
Go
Kaysen,
ahead.
that Garo's correct. This is, and the mayor, it's been a long time in the making. I mean, there's really some historic significance to this because George Street came in and bisected Wright Square when Glen Middle was built or shortly before that. So for us to be able as a city and as a community and as a historic district to reclaim that through some land swap through the Board of Education and now to get to this point is really quite huge. So I commend everybody who's worked through the process in getting us this far. So I think I look at this as a real victory for the city and our community as a whole.
Okay.
You want to make the
Any other
motion,
comments?
Julie?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Thank
I
you.
thought you
Commissioner
might. I
Payson.
apologize for jumping out there in front of you.
No, that's okay. I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the mayor to sign a contract with Jay Hire's company in the amount of $147,197.05 for construction of the Wright Square traffic improvements.
And I'll second.
Okay, it's been properly motion second for us to sign the contract with Jay Hire's company for the construction of the Wright Square traffic improvement. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye or raise your right hand.
Aye.
Aye.
The opposers have the same right to say nay if they like. Hearing nothing from the opposing side, that motion carries. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you for the consideration, and thank you for voting in this direction to make our city even better.
Build
Just
another
keep-
park.
We just keep getting improving and improving. Okay, we're down to item number 5A. This is being brought to us by our city manager for the closure of city offices on December 24th for extended holiday period for our citizens. Ms. McDuffie?
Yes, I'd just like to request on behalf of the city employees that we are given a extra holiday for the Christmas season. We have been working tireless throughout this period with the COVID. There's been a lot of challenges. And I think, it would be just in a great spirit to allow the employees to have a full day of shopping or whatever they would like to do to prepare for the holiday, to support their families and give them this additional benefit.
Okay, I got a question. Did we ever get the gift cards?
We did, and we will give them out on Friday. And we will have a breakfast on Friday morning for the department heads and the commissioners, and it'll be social distance, only about 15 people. So, we really want you all to support that. As well as on Friday, we will give out the gift cards and lunch for our employees as just a COVID related, a COVID type luncheon. But we also have over 70 donated door prizes that we are giving out during that time, along with the gift cards. And we just got a tremendous support from our local business community for our door prizes. So those we were really excited about. And I want to also thank my executive assistant, Deborah McCauley Craig, who has worked tirelessly to put these events on. So thank you.
Okay, Commissioner, you heard from our city manager. What's your will and pleasure for this item?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to offer a motion that we approve the day off for December the 24th, 2020
Second.
for the entire staff.
Motion second for the closure of city hall offices, give our citizens, our staff, employees a day to enjoy the holidays. Any further comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Opposed have the same right? We don't have any screws in the building. That's pretty good. So let's see, the ayes have it. All right. Okay, now we are at item number 6, city attorney item. Consider approval of a quick claim deed for 1607 Wolf Street. Mr. City Manager, Mr. Brian Corey.
City attorney.
City attorney. Oh, my goodness.
I don't
My
know.
bad.
No,
City attorney,
manager.
Mr. Brian Corey.
Yes. Okay. Before what you have before you tonight, this arises out of a request from a title insurance company. There is an interested party in purchasing 1607 Wolf Street, Brunswick, Georgia. In 1968, there was a failure to pay taxes on this property, which resulted in a tax deed being generated for $37 and some odd change. After going through the city's records, there's an indication that the taxes had been paid, but no deed or correction was filed in the property records to show that lien had been satisfied. Tina Edwards with the city's tax collection department has already reviewed the records, and she had issued, typically when a title insurance company would come to us and Naomi or Tina's records indicate no taxes are owed on the property, they could simply issue a release of a tax lien in showing that $0 are owed to the city. Most title insurance companies accept that without issue. This particular one, in order to allow this conveyance to move forward, requested that the city execute a quit claim deed. And what a quit claim deed essentially means is that the city would convey any potential interest it may have in the property. This would be some potential down the road interest that there was unpaid taxes, which we can indicate that they're not, and execute a quitclaim deed and have it filed so that they can move forward with the sale of the property. My recommendation would be to execute the deed. There's a interested party in purchasing the property. It looks like the seller, which is an estate, they had gone through the proper protocols to finally probate that estate and get this property back on the market to try to get it sold. And if there's any questions, please let me know, and I'll be happy to answer them.
I got a question. Have the taxes been paid subsequently from moving forward from the time the city put the lien on it?
I believe so. I mean, we're talking about 1968. The release that Tina executed shows an amount due of taxes of $0.
Okay, so evidently it's been
So-
paid, previously continue to be paid, we just missed
That's
that
what
one,
it appears.
1 year, okay. Any other
And
questions,
again,
Commissioner?
it's not, go ahead.
You go ahead, sir.
I'm good.
Any questions, commissioners? All right, seems like everything's in order. I entertain a motion, please.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion second for the approval of quick claim deed to 1607 Norwood Street. Wolf Street, excuse me, Wolf Street. No questions. All in favor, please raise your right hand, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed have the same right. Hearing none from the opposing side, that motion carries. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you for that. Thank you for a good meeting too as well. Is there any need for an executive session?
Yes, for litigation.
Okay, there's a need for executive session. We will
Mr.
adjourn.
Mayor, for motion that we adjourn to executive session for litigation.
Second.
Motion second for us to adjourn to executive session for litigation. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, the same right? No opposed? Okay, then we will leave this this forum here and go into executive session. I'll see you in executive session, everybody. Wow, I'm here. I made it back. Do we have Commissioner Harris or Williams? I don't think John is going to join us, so.
I'm waiting along with everybody else.
Okay, Commissioner Harris. Oh, yes, you're there. Sorry.
You good?
Let me tell you something too. It's nothing bad against Commissioner Kaysen, but he was not named in this suit, and that is best.
Mayor, we're live.
Whoa,
We're
we're
live.
back in open session,
Yeah, we're back.
Okay.
and I've been letting him know.
Okay.
Okay, we have enough to make a motion if everybody's ready.
All right. Okay. We're back into regular session. We had an executive session and there were no votes taken. Just only talk about litigation. Now, before I entertain a motion to adjourn, I'd like to say Merry Christmas to everybody, and we'll see everybody if you can. Congratulations to Commissioner Martin and her daughter, the family for the new addition to the family.
Yes.
And want everybody to enjoy themselves with holidays, and the ones who can make the breakfast on Friday morning, we'll look forward to seeing you there. Any other comment you want to say before I ask for adjournment?
Merry Christmas to everyone.
Okay. All right. So we're here. We get ready to close our meeting. I need a motion to adjourn our meeting.
Motion to adjourn. Oh, sorry. You, Commissioner Martin? Can't hear you.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we got a motion. We got a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Merry Christmas. Happy New
Merry
Year.
Christmas, everybody. We
Merry
stand adjourned.
Christmas. Good night.
Everybody be safe.
Good night.
Good
Be
night.
safe.
Yes, be safe.
Thank you for a good meeting.
Thank you.
All right.